Hey folks, before we dive in, just a quick reminder. If you want to stay up to date with stories like this one, make sure you follow S News. It really helps us out if you subscribe, like, and, drop a comment below. Thanks for supporting us. 31 pirate boats attacked a US Navy supply ship. Then this happened. On July 5th, 2025, in the sweltering waters off the coast of Somalia, 31 fast boats carrying around 250 pirates attacked a US Navy supply ship. This vessel was quietly transporting crucial supplies to a nearby American aircraft carrier. The pirates, heavily armed with rocket launchers and machine guns, moved in with terrifying coordination. Within minutes, they were close to taking over the ship, but they underestimated who they were dealing with. Suddenly, the sky shook. 10 MH-60 Seahawk helicopters arrived, carrying 300 elite U.S. Special Forces, all armed with advanced weapons. 5 FA-18 Super Hornets and 20 MQ-25 Stingray drones locked in on a single target, the pirate stronghold. The response was swift, fierce, and unforgiving. There were no negotiations, no mercy, no time for second thoughts, because when you hijack a ship flying the American flag, you're not just taking on a crew, you're taking on the full force of the United States military. So what exactly happened on board? At 6:12 a.m. on July 5, 2025, a U.S. Navy supply ship, disguised as a civilian cargo vessel, was making its way silently through pirate-infested waters off the Somali coast. Its mission, deliver fuel and a classified explosive compound needed to operate F-35 jets and long-range cruise missiles on a nearby carrier. This wasn't just cargo. It was a lifeline for a U.S. carrier strike group.
Then an alarm went off.
Out of nowhere, 31 pirate boats sped in at over 50 knots like a swarm of bees. Each boat had 8 pirates armed with RPGs, machine guns and spears. More than 240 attackers, battle-hardened and well-organized. This was no random ambush. It was a full-on military-style assault. The pirates split into coordinated attack teams. One group fired rockets and deck-mounted weapons to pin down the Americans, forcing them to take cover. Another group hit the ship's blind spots, threw up grappling hooks and started climbing aboard. Gunfire tore through the once peaceful sea. U.S. security forces fought back from behind steel containers. They managed to take down 2 pirates, but it wasn't enough. In under 4 minutes, the ship was overrun. 5 American sailors were killed, 3 were seriously wounded. The pirates stormed the bridge and took control. Survivors were tied up with tow cables and forced to lie face down at gunpoint. But one act changed everything. Just before being captured, the ship's captain, himself a former Navy lieutenant, quietly triggered a silent distress signal. It was instantly picked up by the nearest U.S. carrier group, which was less than 200 kilometers away. The pirates had no idea what they had just done. They thought they'd hijacked another ship for ransom. What they didn't know was that they had just disrupted a critical link in the U.S. Navy's strike chain. And more importantly, they didn't realize that hundreds of American fighter jets were already in the air, heading straight for them.
No one seizes American naval assets and walks away. No one threatens our supply lines without consequences. The U.S. will respond faster, harder, and farther than they could ever imagine. This won't end in negotiations. It'll end in explosions visible from space.
Still watching? Good. Because now comes the part where U.S. forces take back the ship inch by inch. To the outside world, the vessel looked like a rusty, slow, unremarkable cargo ship. But beneath its steel decks was one of the most vital assets in the Navy's logistics network. Officially named Delta 72, the ship was carrying high-density jet fuel, missile stabilizers, thermal ignition compounds, and encrypted avionics components for the nearby carrier strike group in the Arabian Sea. In short, without that ship, the F-35s couldn't fly. The missile systems couldn't launch. It was a floating fuel line, a mobile arsenal, and a high-value target. The pirates didn't know it. But by seizing that ship, they had just disrupted a key node in the U.S. global strike network. If those materials were sold off, or worse, reverse-engineered, the fallout would stretch far beyond the Indian Ocean. Inside the Pentagon, red alerts were flashing. The incident was immediately classified as a national security breach. Intelligence officers feared that if the pirates offloaded the cargo, it could end up in the hands of hostile nations or terrorist networks. Time was running out. The pirates were less than 10 nautical miles from their coastal base, a known black market hub that had dodged international raids for years. The US had no choice. They had to strike fast, hard, and with absolute certainty. This wasn't just a rescue mission. It was a message to every rogue actor on Earth. If you mess with America's supply lines, you'll get the full force of the United States. At 6:15 in the morning, just 3 minutes after the pirates stormed the US supply ship, a covert emergency signal lit up the operations screen aboard the USS Liberty, the lead carrier in the nearby strike group stationed 128 miles southwest. Within 30 seconds, a red alert, Priority 1, hostile takeover of high-value naval asset, was transmitted across 3 US Navy ships and 2 airborne command centers. There was absolutely no time for diplomacy. Admiral Peter Sloan gave the order without hesitation. Initiate Operation Thundernet. Move now. The response was immediate and surgical. Aboard the USS Liberty, 10 MH-60 Seahawk helicopters launched from the flight deck. Each carried 30 fully armed Special Operations Marines and Navy SEALs. A total of 300 elite soldiers had been carefully selected to board the ship and rescue the hostages. At the same time, 5 FA-18 Super Hornets were loaded with precision-guided bombs and GAU-7 Alpha machine guns capable of firing thousands of rounds per minute. Below deck, flight crews launched 20 MQ-25 Stingray drones, top of the line in both reconnaissance and AI-guided strike capabilities. Each drone was armed with dual bomb bays, advanced thermal targeting, and real-time encrypted data feeds to the Tactical Command Center. Within 9 minutes of the distress call, the skies above the Indian Ocean came alive. 3 attack waves were launched. Wave 1 drones sent ahead to locate the hijacked ship and spot any escort boats. Wave 2 Super Hornets flying wide to suppress enemy fire from above. Wave 3 Seahawk helicopters flying low, hugging the sea just beneath radar coverage. Each flight group was tracked in real time by satellites and E-2 Delta Hawkeye early warning aircraft, ensuring total control over the airspace. Back on the carrier, Admiral Sloan watched the digital map. The hijacked ship was just 8.2 nautical miles from a known pirate compound. If the enemy reached land, it would become a complex urban fight, far more dangerous for the hostages. There was no time to wait and no room for error. This wasn't just about rescue, it was a statement, and America was about to make it with overwhelming force and surgical precision.
There's no turning back now. Every second counts.
At 7:01 a.m., as the hijacked US supply ship drifted within sight of the Somali coastline, the skies above it suddenly shifted. From the east, a formation of MQ-25 Stingray drones appeared in complete radio silence. Flying low and fast just feet above the water, they broke off into attack formations. The lead drone identified 4 pirate escort boats surrounding the ship. Within seconds, each one was tagged and locked. Then came the first wave of fire. Precision bombs rained down, exploding with pinpoint accuracy. The sea erupted with fire and spray, all 4 boats destroyed in under 12 seconds. At the same time, 2 FA-18 Super Hornets dove in from high altitude, strafing the ship's port side. Their machine guns shredded the upper deck, tearing through sandbag positions and pirate firing points. RPGs exploded mid-air before they could be fired. Then, like ghosts rising from the sea, 10 MH-60 Seahawks appeared from the west, hovering just above the water. Ropes dropped. Navy SEALs and Marine raiders fast-roped onto the deck in perfect coordination. The pirates didn't stand a chance. From bow to stern, the American operators moved like a machine. Room by room, deck by deck, they cleared the ship. One team breached the bridge, killing 2 pirates before they could lift their weapons. Another team neutralized threats near the engine room with flashbangs and silenced fire. The hostages, bloodied and bound, were quickly located and pulled to the mid-deck. Medics stabilized the wounded while elite forces set up a 360-degree perimeter. In under 8 minutes, all pirates on board were either dead or captured. Not a single American hostage was lost. But the mission wasn't over.
The adrenaline was just unreal. We moved fast. Every room, every corner. We knew the hostages were counting on us, and honestly, failure wasn't an option. When we got them to the mid-deck, you could see the relief on their faces. But we all knew we weren't done yet.
Drone footage from Radiocom picked up a pirate base just 7 nautical miles inland, a heavily armed compound with vehicle bays, fuel storage, radar towers, and years of black market infrastructure. It had dodged global raids for nearly a decade.
Change target. Wipe it out.
Minutes later, 4 more Super Hornets swept inland. They dropped GBU-32 JDAM bombs onto key structures, destroying the headquarters in a single strike. Secondary explosions lit up the shoreline as fuel bunkers and ammo depots erupted into fireballs. The final strike came from above. A Reaper drone dropped a single Hellfire missile onto the central tower, Building D. The explosion could be seen for miles. By 7:29 a.m., the pirate base no longer existed. Over 500 pirates were confirmed dead, with dozens more either captured or buried under rubble. The message was clear. You don't hijack a US Navy vessel. You don't touch a lifeline of American power. That pirate compound had stood for years, hidden along the Somali coast, protected by terrain and corruption. It was their fortress, their black market hub, their untouchable sanctuary. By 7:30 a.m. it was ash. Once the supply ship was secure, the US Navy turned its full force on the pirate base. Using real-time drone surveillance, exact GPS coordinates were fed to a secondary strike group circling inland. First came FA-18 Super Hornets in tight combat formation. At just 500 feet, they dropped GBU-32 laser-guided bombs with surgical accuracy. The command center collapsed instantly. Walls crumbled, radar towers fell. Flames filled the sky. Then came the MQ-9 Reapers, each carrying Hellfire missiles and thermal optics. They struck bunker entrances and hidden weapons caches. One missile hit a concealed arms depot, triggering a chain of secondary explosions that leveled half the compound. The pirates tried to fight back, but it was hopeless. Their anti-air defenses were outdated, overloaded, and ineffective before they could even locate a single US aircraft. Then came the ground assault. From two CH-53 helicopters, US Marines stormed the flaming perimeter and launched a coordinated sweep. Using drone feeds and infrared goggles, they hunted down the last resistance in alleys and tunnels. No warning shots, no negotiations. In under 20 minutes, more than 500 pirates were neutralized. Dozens were captured, zip-tied, blindfolded, and airlifted for interrogation. By 8 o'clock a.m., what had once been a pirate stronghold was now a smoking crater of twisted steel and scorched earth. The world had just watched it happen. And for every pirate, warlord, or rogue state watching, the warning was clear and permanent. You touch the US at sea, and you risk being erased from the map.
This mission wasn't just a rescue, it was a strategic reminder. In a world increasingly defined by asymmetric warfare, piracy, and grey zone conflict, the US Navy proved that logistics are not a weakness, they're a strength. The supply ship, often overlooked and underdefended, had become the nerve center of the carrier group's offensive power. And when that link was threatened, the US didn't hesitate. It responded with everything modern warfare, surveillance, air dominance, special forces, and precision strikes. The pirates thought they could strike fast, disappear along the coast, and negotiate from a place of fear. Instead, they found out what it really costs to provoke a superpower.
This was a lesson in readiness for US military planners. The world's oceans remain contested, and America's global presence depends on protecting the lifelines that sustain it. This wasn't just about Somalia, it was a warning to every enemy on every shore. Attack one ship, and you face the full weight of an entire nation. Rescuing that US supply ship wasn't just a military victory, it was a declaration. A reminder that the US doesn't tolerate threats to its forces, its people, or its presence on the world stage. What began as a brutal ambush by over 240 armed pirates ended with the total destruction of their forces, their base, and the safe return of every American crew member. But beyond the battlefield success, this operation sent a deeper message. America's strength isn't just in its carriers or fighter jets, it's in its ability to respond fast, precisely, and without compromise. Every link in the chain, from supply vessels to forward bases, is guarded by a force that doesn't sleep, doesn't back down, and doesn't forget. And for any hostile force watching, the ocean is vast, but nowhere is safe when the United States sets its sights on you. And for every American watching, wherever our flag flies, we're